thank goodness we still have people in our audience here. My biggest worry is that at this present time, most of you would have just head for the exit. Okay, a good thank you to all of you who stay back. Let's make this session, an engaging one. I will not go into formal introduction of these distinguished panelists. I think you all can read from the biography contained in the handouts. But what I'm going to do is to just introduce you who they are. On my far left, it's Datuk Nora, a very old friend of mine who's been around for years. She helped. Yes. Okay. Okay. You have David on my left, immediate left, and Meda Lim, and as well as Hock Lai. My name is Luan. I'm just going to briefly go through the context of which where we are today before I hand over to each of these panelists to converse with us the opinions as well as the ideas on the questions at hand. Okay, the topic today is about how do we. Sorry, I just read the wrong line here. I'm so sorry. Okay, the session here is all about the identifying and developing talent to future-proof banks and financial institutions in the light of the current context that we are in. As we have seen more recently on changes not only nationally but internationally. On the international front, we continue to see developments in the most unpredictable and complex way. And those comes not only in the political front, but also in terms of the economic and social developments. At hand, we have got new policies as well as the aspiration of the government, not only to raise the middle income level to the higher income level, and the expectation of the industry to play a role towards greater digitalization of the industry as well as the society. In other words, moving upstream to move away from what we used to be, as well as to revitalize industries in the context of changes that are taking place right now. For example, digitalization disruptions that's already been happening over the years. Importantly, as we have seen the impact of ESG, as we have seen in the previous speakers. So I thought that it'd be great to have our speakers here to get them to give us opinions on questions that on hand. I think it'd be good to start off with some of the questions here that we talk about, and a quick hand on the informal side of it. I like to just call upon Dato' Nora to begin, with the first question here that we have. Just a quick opinion on where do you think we are heading, in the near future, in terms of the talent development within the context that we just described.
Sure. It's a bit of a conflicting thing when you say quick, but then a very big question.
Yeah.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good afternoon. I think, you've heard the complexities that we're facing, right? Multiple fronts. So it is a big agenda and topic, if you want to talk about, the question that you asked. But for me, what all that boils down to is ensuring that we create the right environment for talents to unlearn, right, and to continue learning. Now, I choose my words very carefully. I didn't say relearn, because there's a danger to quickly relearning now when everything is changing, okay? That is so dangerous, because that is what, now forgive me, but Dr. Mazlan, I'm very direct, right? I see a lot of people going around implementing things, enforcing things, assessing things, as if that's all that matters. Okay? How can that be when things are transitioning? Right? Everything is transitioning. So that's my first point, I think. Let's not be too sure. In the Securities Commission session, I used the analogy of, there's so many hammers going around, okay? And hammers only recognize nails, okay? So if there is no nail, then, you are accused of things, not doing things and stuff like that, or you don't have the skills. That's very dangerous. So for me, and I need to qualify that when I attempted to answer from this angle at another session a few days ago, one of the people in the audience took it the wrong way, because she actually posted at LinkedIn and said that I said, there's no skills for the future that's required. Okay? Oh my God, right? That's not the takeaway. Okay? Technical skills is a minimum requirement. Credit skills is a minimum requirement. Knowing what needs to be complied for what reason. It's more of the why, kan, Dr. Mazlan? It's not the how so much, because the how can change, because it's transitioning. So in a nutshell, it's not about the technical stuff, because that is a given. And the technical stuff, there are faster ways to do it today. You don't need a course, in basic level and an intermediate. That's just too slow, right? Just equip people with, on the go, we've got that, right? We've got micro, we've got ChatGPT, right? I use the example of we tested with our sales workforce, right? One group came in all equal, no sales experience. One group came in the traditional training. The second group, ChatGPT, immediately, their sales conversion was 3 times more. So that's a given. That's already a given. Sorry already. Okay? We need to move on. So what we need to look at is what I said earlier. 2 things. One, how we govern our talents. That needs to transition. Okay? Second, create the right environment. So if we're talking about banking and FIs, especially incumbents, right, there are plenty to be changed. And by doing that, inshallah, God willing, our talents will behave a different way. For example, what we talked about earlier, that your panel talked about earlier, right? Credit assessment and so forth. If we're not doing the traditional way, it can be risky if we don't have the right people. And the right people are not those who only have the technical skills. That's my point. Right? I think Benjamin just now mentioned. Have the right people. What do we mean by the right people? The right people are people who behave and think, right, the right way. And that's not going to take 10 years. Right? People respond to how they're treated. Which is why I go back to the governance, how they are governed, and how they're treated in the workplace. Those are what's more important right now.
Thank you, Dr. Nora. I think you touched on a very key point on the question of how. You also spoke about creating the conducive environment while retaining the traditional core skills. You talk about identifying and ensuring that you have the right behaviors to support the transition that you refer to. Okay, let's move to David. Where are you coming from, David? I think you have vast experience in leadership. Does leadership competency play a role towards what Dr. Nora has given us, the macro change that we are transiting?
Yes, so firstly, I am very happy that Dr. Nora was the first to go and set the trail for this, right? Because what I'm going to say basically builds on what she has framed as the environment for the talent to grow here. So I am an organization psychologist and work as an executive coach. I'm Singaporean, but spend most of my time in Malaysia. Yeah, well, I came to Malaysia about 15 years ago when I was hired as an expatriate in one of the banks here to build up their leadership institute, you know, first as a consultant, and also to run executive assessments because they were going through massive merger and acquisitions. So they were, you know, acquiring numerous banks across Asia. And me and my team were helping to assess the talent and deciding who would sit on the bench and who would leave, right? And then I crossed over and joined that organization and helped build the Leadership Institute for a good 7 years before starting my own practice with a group of other founders across Asia and US and Europe for the last 8 years. So interestingly, you know, I work a lot with financial institutions, both in the fintech sector and also in the major banks who are much more established. Yeah, what I tend to notice across these organizations is actually one word, and that is trust. Yeah, I find a challenge that is unique to leaders in this space to be one about building trust. And interestingly, if you think about the reason why banks exist is because we trust banks with our money, right? Why else would you put money in a bank? You want to see your money, you know, be stable and to some extent grow. Yeah, and why would you go to a fintech like that remits money? Think of all the domestic workers and so on that relies on these remittance companies. Yeah, they do it because they trust these companies with their money, right? And that whole system of trust needs to start with the people who are running these banks, down all the way to whoever sweeps the floor in the bank. Yeah, because this is the kind of culture, this is the environment that enables the talent that you're going to have to bring their best thinking to the table. And that's the main challenge I find. We see a lot of graduates coming out of universities, you know, that Hoglai will be training, providing all sort of digital skill sets, yeah. But they can't really deploy all the skills that they are having if there's no environment of trust between them and the manager to start learning. Yeah, so Dr. Nora was talking about this whole environment of learning and unlearning. That takes a lot of experimentation. No one can go to school and then claim that they can do something after learning acquiring a particular knowledge. And that environment is critically important. So how do you create that environment that allows that talent to start learning very fast and in order to deploy their skill and then multiply it out? Yeah. So I see that at the mass level. But I also see at the leadership level that it is not about that individual doing very well, but how do you build that trusting environment within your leadership team so that you can become a force to be reckoned with and that you work with each other because you trust each other to bring your best self to play. Yeah. So that's one. The other thing that comes with trust is this ability to learn fast to make mistakes. Yeah. I think more and more, whatever technology that we have, so, you know, this thing about AI isn't something that came out in the last 5 years, right? It's been around for a long time. Yeah. I happened to meet some of the founders in this AI when I was working at the World Economic Forum. And at that time, we were inviting all these thought leaders and practice leaders and researchers, you know, to talk about the future of technology. So Klaus Schwab was very advanced in that way to bring this community together. But this technology has always been there. Then you ask the question, why is it not be deployed as quickly as possible? It's because of the adoption and the willingness to actually learn and fail. Yeah. And so I think, again, it goes back to the whole point about being trust. How do you create an environment that allows people to make mistakes and learn? The right kind of mistakes. not the kind that comes from negligence or that comes from laziness, but really the environment to experiment and learn very quickly with that. Yeah. So, to your question, Keluan, I think those are the key leadership competencies that a leader needs to be able to build.
Okay. Thank you, David. You have made my job easier by posing two questions that I could pass on to Hock Lai. Hock Lai, coming from a fintech environment, two questions that we wish to ask you. One is, how do you create that culture of trust within the fintech environment, knowing a high percentage of these companies fail and gone, okay? Second, importantly, is you guys are famous for fast, easy, and convenient. And your target audience are obviously different from the contemporary banks. Would you be able to share some experiences with you all before I move on to Meda, who could then share with her own experience from her OCBC side? So over to you.
Okay. First and foremost, I actually agree with what Datuk Nora says, as in before we jump into skills training, right, looking for the right talent, there must be strategic alignment of what are the skills that you need that actually will help you to achieve your organization purpose. So we don't just go for training for the sake of training. So I think in the fintech environment, it's no different from banks. The way to establish trust is actually similar. The first one is the strategic alignment that will give your employees the sense of purpose, and then they can see where they can add value. And then the second thing is really something that's more bottom up. After you do a skills mapping of where are the talents that you need to do customized development plans for each employee, because every staff have different aspiration, different aptitude. You cannot give a one-size-fits-all training for all of them. And by customizing the development plan for them, you actually will engage them. They will be better engaged and be more productive. And then somewhere in between, you need to have a mentorship framework whereby the senior staff could provide guidance and transfer knowledge to the junior staff. But sometimes you can also do the reverse, what some call reverse mentoring, whereby the junior staff can teach the older staff new stuff, right? And then David also shared about creating that trusted environment. So I think with these 3 points, right, it's important to wrap all these three with creating a safe environment for experimentation, so that the staff knows that there are certain things they can make mistakes, and more importantly, they can learn from it. Then that will allow them to have a more risk-taking attitude while knowing that it will be based on calculated risk. So that's one thing. The other question is about how fintech companies can serve clients more effectively than traditional banks, is it? I think one thing that fintech said, initially when fintech started, right, what they differentiate themselves significantly on is on the whole customer experience and journey. Because if you look at it, right, many of the fintechs, when they started, they're actually riding on the licenses of incumbents, or they are working on new services that is unclear whether regulatory license is needed. So they focus a lot on customer experience, and those kind of skill sets will be related to things like design thinking. It will be related to skill sets like digital product management, which I think over the years, a lot of the incumbents has caught up. And nowadays, it's very common that design thinking, product management are being taught in many incumbents. Yeah, so in a way, there is equalization of this kind of skill sets already. Yeah.
Thank you, Hock Lai. I'm going to be a devil's advocate. The 3 points that you raised are one size fits all, the effectiveness of mentorship, and also tolerating mistakes. These 3 things may not necessarily be agreed to by a lot of people working either at the mid-level managers in the bank, obviously there's very low tolerance for mistakes, particularly when you're dealing with other people's money. So rightfully, I should ask Maida to answer this question, especially coming from Singapore environment, the OCBC experience. Can you be able to shed some lights on whether the 3 points that he raised, one size fits all, the issue on mentorship, and as well as tolerating mistakes?
Okay, so today we have been talking a lot about transformation, talent, trust. I think a lot of the key on that. My personal belief is we can buy technology, but we cannot buy talent. Why we can't buy talent? Talent, it needs to be nurtured, and talent relates to competency. Competency is something which is, it needs to be trained, it needs to be acquired. So if let's say we talk so much about talent, what are the formula for talent? I would like to offer a simple view for talents, right? Talent is A, B, C, D. A is acquired. We just need to acquire the right talent. How we acquire a right talent? Because talent is a war today, and talent is a race. It's no longer that we need to run faster, we need to run faster than other organizations. Every company now become a digital company because of all this transformation. So how can we acquire the right talent? For example, in the OCBC context, we set tests for the talent that we want to acquire. It's not about setting up the interview. We set a so-called competency question and the test. If let's say that I hire a developer, the developer need to pass the test to do coding before the person, he or she, get a seat or a slot for the interview. So the test that they have to go through, it becomes a statistic with data supported. That it's not about we feel good or the CV looks good. Therefore, we interview the person or we hire the person. We test on the competency before we acquire the talent. And then B is very much build the pipeline. Talent can come from many different so-called different level in the organization. It can be junior all the ways to senior. Or maybe we put it in the context of software developer. This is probably, I think, the most difficult profile they need to acquire or need to hire in the today context. So in the software developer, we also break them into a category from a junior developer all the way to the distinguished engineer type of the level. So we give them leadership pathway, we give them career development pathway. So we need to build a pipeline not only with the industry, we need to build it together with the school. We need to make sure that the school teach them what is needed in the marketplace. Sometimes I joke with some of the school, I say you need to provide the talent with battery included. It's not about getting, like we go to Toys R Us, we buy toys, right? When the kids get so excited, go home, battery not included. We need to go to 7-Eleven to buy battery again. So this become a competency question that the school, they need to train with the student or with the kids or with the young talent with the competency levels that relevance to the marketplace. And the third one is C. C is a culture. It's an environment that we talk a lot about trust. And we need to build a culture that not only inclusive, but also the area that meet the ESG requirement. Gender, gender diversity, it need to be inclusive. Like for example, recently in our situation, in our context here, we hire a blockchain developer. The person come from the autism background. But we change some of the hiring process then to make sure that we comply to the ESG governance. And secondly, we want to be inclusive in the marketplace, in the hiring process, in tapping into the talent. So then D is to develop a self-learning a culture. So it had to be self-motivated learning. It's not about sending the staff for certification, but we need to make sure that we have a training framework, a development framework that enable the staff to learn anything they want, anywhere they want, and anytime they want, from anywhere. So with all the mobility program that now we have, we also enable them that, okay, you can also log in to the platform to do your learning. All the learning will also put into their development plan. And we can also have an individual say, okay, the person is from the banking hall. However, because of we have all this learning pathway, the person transform or relearn or unlearn into the skill set as a software developer. We do have many of all these situations, or become a data scientist as well. So the question is about the learning pathway. As organizations, when we value talents, we need to give them the learning pathway. So with that, I put it in a very simple, ABCD is, firstly, it's about the acquiring. We need to make sure that we acquire the talents that to enable the organization. B is to build the pipeline. C is the culture with the, that is inclusive, that diverse, that we have built trust. And D is about the developments of the individuals.
Okay, thank you, Meda. Thank you all of you for giving a very good perspective, at least for a start on where you are today in this whole concept and application of talent development. I have one question that I wish to ask every one of you all. You know very well that we work on the basis that, that on-the-job training appears to be the most effective, rather than sending people for various courses. But banks are the ones that have got the biggest training budget, if I'm not wrong, where we spend a lot of money in not only just deploying numerous in-house and as well as external courses. Questions I'd like to ask the panelists is, where do you see the value proposition of learning today? Would we prefer to be more so putting emphasis on the job, or rather than that, deploying a series of systematic programs to fit in the career paths of individuals? Perhaps each one of you may be able to give us your perspective as well as your experiences. Let's begin with Dato' Nora. Your Maybank experience, I'm sure, has a lot of experiences to share with us. Please, thank you.
Wow, this is really living sustainability. He switched it on to conserve battery. Okay, so, no, you know, a lot of what we are talking about that reflects the current environment. One of my angst is that people pick and choose when to use it. So for me, hyper-personalization, for example, is not just a faddish term, it is real, right? It is real because data is available on anything and everything, actually, if you know how to look for it, okay? But the problem is, of course, we are swimming in data, but then we are data blind. You know, that's a problem that we have today. So within that context, yeah, it's about fit for purpose, right? Because again, I don't just say, yeah, 70% on the job is most important, most effective. Yeah, depending on what outcome I want, right? For example, the entire of last year, we spent a lot of money, and I will not share that, okay? Actually bringing our top 3,600, 3,800, Natasha, managers and leaders, okay, to KL from our 18 countries, okay? Why? Because you cannot teach people collaboration. We cannot teach people how to use networks. Just now, that Dr. Mazlan said partnerships, right? You cannot teach people that, right? Even in their workplaces, because collaboration is not collaboration just within your team, all right? We need people to transcend boundaries, transcend, right, businesses. So we actually brought them together.
So collaboration competencies is now a necessity.
It is an absolute necessity. Because you must know how to ride on digitalization, right? And digitalization represents scale, right? Represents immediacy, it's quick, right? And how can you be quick and get the outcome? You have to partner, right? Those are not natural skills and capabilities that we have been conditioned with So, you said you're old friends with me. No need to emphasize the old, but okay. But for those of us who went through the conditioning in school, in college, we're not conditioned to know how to collaborate, how to just use platform, use networks, right? So those, you have to bring, so it's not at the workplace. We brought them to a location, residential use, because I'm a Harvard AMP grad as well, so I recognize
you make them become more friendly.
Yes,
friendly,
yes.
okay.
And then after that, we got a lot of things going, right? I have people from Singapore who said, yeah, we are in the same city, and we are not that big in terms of population, and yet I've never actually spoken to him, you know? And then they went back, and they cut that process, because then they realized they're parts of a single process, right? They realized that they can cut it by half. What it took was to bring both of them to KL. Can you imagine that, right? It can be any other city. So that's my answer, in terms of don't look at things traditionally. And to start that, that's what we're trying to build in the organization. Question, and that's another, conditioning that you and I are probably not as, good at, because we've been told don't ask questions, just do it, right? So a lot of the statements made, for example, in terms of, oh, be careful, branches, banks with branches, right? You don't need branches anymore, and everybody was talking about the 10 to 15 years. I always question and say, who knows, right? We already have the largest branch network, brick and mortar network. That's our strength. Something, of course, it needs to be changed. What happens in the brick and mortar, and it may be community-based. That's a COVID lesson, by the way, right? When we say transitioning business models to a sustainable model, it's about human to human. And by the way, the jobs that are going to be, more and more in demand are the human to human jobs and human to community jobs, right? Because the rest can be given to AI and Gen AI, right? We'd be silly if we don't use robotics, and so forth, right? So why? You have to create that environment. That's what, David and I are saying, and Hotline as well, right? You create that environment so that people can ask why safely, right? And they ask why not from a totally zero-based, of course, right? We make sure they've got the credit skills and all that, right? But applying their knowledge rightly. So I constantly say to the team, I don't really care what you know. I care about what you do with what you know. And that's how we assess people as well. For a very long time already, many years now, I ban CGPA, for example, right? Even assessments, technical assessments, it's a given already. By the time you come to us, I'm more interested in what you do with what you know. So that's the kind of assessment, if you like. And then equal opportunity. If you really believe in UN SDG principles, right? There are people out there who are very resilient, very industrious, very resourceful. They may not have the paper qualification, right? So why the heck is the paranoia on 3.5 CGPA or 10 years experience? 10 years experience in credit card, if all you've been doing is putting credit cards into envelopes, right? That's 10 years, right? So those are things that to me has to change, right? Then, the learning will become useful for the right outcomes, right? Okay.
So, Dr. Nora, before I pass on to David, two questions here for you, a quick answer from you. So, do I get it that your emphasis on the intangibles, collaboration is one of them. How do you measure that? That's one. Secondly, for the overall performance management of the people within the bank that you come from, has that changed? Because as far as we grew up with that you measure what you can measure, which is mostly the financial dimension. Has that changed?
Sure. Well, thank you for the question, because it's a very important question. To me, it's very important. Firstly, on the staff side, yeah, don't get me wrong, right? I do say to the team, we are producing the highest PBT in the country. We have to triple that, Why? Not to enrich ourselves, because we have so much curing to do. We have to help society. Yes, where is, this previous panel, right? I don't look at it as CSR or charity or foundation-led. It's a business, right? We just have to, everybody has to just be able to do more. SME is the backbone of the economy of every country. They must be able to pay minimum wage, right? And more, right? So those are key, right? So yes, we need revenue, we need PBT, right? And we measure the increase is revenue per staff. That's the commitment to the board and shareholders, right? But then from a corporate perspective, some of that needs to change during transitioning. Because if management teams are measured by investors and shareholders, right, purely on the levels that, I mean, ROE at, double digit, right, year-on-year growth, double digit, then they are in a catch-22 situation. The measurements for pure capitalism and responsible capitalism, of course there must be some shifts, right? But that doesn't mean we eat love, I would say. We can't eat love. We still need money. As Madonna says, it's a material world. Okay?
I think we can all live on air and love sometimes, but I'm not sure. Okay, thank you, Dr. Nora. David, your opinion on what has been shared so far?
I said I'm an org psychologist, right?
Yes,
So I'd like to run a little experiment here. Let me check, how many of you here have LinkedIn? Yeah, almost everyone, right?
Yeah.
Now, how many of you have about 500 connections on your LinkedIn? Yeah, most people would have about 500, or at least 100, right? Now, let me ask you, when you have a challenge or problem that's serious enough, how many people do you turn to ask for help? Is it 5 or 10? 10? Would you turn to 100? No, right? So who are the most important people? Your most powerful connections, right? I think that echoes what Dr. Nora was saying. That if you truly want to build capability, it's the power of this connection that matters. Yeah. So you asked that question, Keluan, earlier. Is it better to do more formal training, or is it better to learn via doing? And I think what Dr. Nora has introduced is that this power of exposure and connection is a big leverage in itself. Yeah, because it's easy to have formal training, and of course with resources you can deploy that. Yeah, but taking the effort to build that connections is what really counts. Take for example this forum that we have. I see so many tables here. Yeah. But the question to ask ourselves is, do we actually know 5 more people? Yeah, and can you imagine if you just know 5 more people in a forum like this, what is the network effect of that, right? So I have observed that throughout the time that I've done talent development work, and I want to give you one particular point in history when I was the Associate Dean of the World Economic Forum's Global Leadership Fellows Program. So we built a program by recruiting a group of management associates that came from very good universities around the world. Yeah. But what was interesting is when we brought them together, right, the group of 30 people, when we look at their intelligence and how much they were contributing, it was actually negative of what this group was capable of doing. In fact, we felt that the IQ that individually averaged around 120 seems to be reduced to 100. Yeah. And that program, by the way, is still around today. Because then what do? We spend a lot of time and effort building the power of that community, right? And that power of community comes from how do you leverage each other? How do you build that trust out of each other? So we even went to places together like the Alps in Switzerland, where they have to do various trust activities together. And of course, we have good exposure through. I mean, all the Ivy League universities from Harvard to INSEAD were all lining up to offer us programs for free because they want a seat in Davos, you know. So we don't have an issue with that. But the real challenge comes from building that community. And when we were successful in doing that, you know, out of which some of them became, you know, in a short matter of 10 years, the managing directors who were running the organization. A few of them became ministers, right, finance ministers in countries. A few of them run hedge funds, you know, and major companies. So I came back to Asia and replicated this model in some of the companies that I work with. And that essentially, basically, underlying that is what Dr. Nora was saying, this power of community and connection. Yeah, we should stay new well. All right, so that's my perspective on this.
Okay, thank you, David. Hock Lai, you come from the fintech world. Most people, I presume, deal with only the digitalization. It's not just the machine and the AI and so on. Obviously, there's a lot of emotions involved. Can you share your experiences in, assuming you agree with the two panelists earlier on, that connecting the dot as well as building the power of community, perhaps coming from where you are, would you like to share some of your experiences?
Just a clarification, I also spent 17 years in a traditional financial institution.
Okay,
good. What I see is that, I mean, people working in fintech are no different from people working in the financial institutions. So my answer to that is that I don't think the answer is a binary. It's a either or. It will be a mix, and as we know, right, there are soft skills that are essential, and those soft skills, sometimes you really need to bring people together, like what Dr. Nora said, in order for them to learn the team camaraderie. And some of the new technical skills, the organization might not have them. For example, generative AI is something pretty new. You might not have the necessary talent in order to do OJT. Or even if we talk about institutional digital assets, you might not have talent within the organization who know about asset tokenization. So some of the tech skills, you still need to go for external training. And the other, I mean, one of my past experience has been that typically those organizations that only focus on OJT, typically because they don't have sufficient training budget. Because, let's be frank, OJT saves a lot of money on training. But as we know nowadays, a lot of employees, they look beyond just pure financial compensation. They also look at non-monetary aspects of an employment, including continuous training, not just OJT. Sometimes they also want to learn something that might not be directly relevant to their job. And I know one of the banks actually, in Singapore, they actually let the staff, they empower the staff that as long as the training course they go to is less than 500, they don't need to get any approval. So that's very empowering. But the only requirement they stated is that when the staff comes back from a training, they have to share their experience with the rest of the department. So I think this is one way to have a good balance on balancing training budget and empowering staff. Yeah.
Would you like to emphasize a little bit on the power of the community and collaboration? How do you enable that with the people that in the fintech?
Okay, if you look at, again, I feel that fintechs are not very different from financial institutions. The only thing is that fintech is often the intersection of technology, finance, customer experience, right? And you need people from all these different domains to work with one another in order for innovation to happen. So you need to build that community, and everyone can speak each other's language, because the language of the software engineer is different from the person who is doing customer experience. So by building the community, people feel the affinity, and they will be able to speak each other's language. This kind of cross-functional collaboration will actually bring a lot of intangible benefit, which is difficult to measure, but will be actually very positive for the organization.
You know, during the post-COVID era where we are now today, there is now a choice for employees to choose working from home as well as coming to work. In some countries like United Kingdom, you know, they are quite firm about working from home, particularly the civil service. Some even 4 days at home and 1 day coming to work. Do you see that has an implication on that connection, you know, between people? Or do you see the digital connection is no different?
I think people want choice. In fact, this is often one of the intangible things that they look for, as in the option to be able to work from home for some days of the week. And currently, I see this is something that is implemented in most departments in banks in Singapore, whereby you only need to come back 2 or 3 times a week. Because I think through COVID, organizations realized that actually a lot of things can be done virtually. But there are also times that you need to come back to office and have that face-to-face interaction. So it's really striking the balance.
Okay. Would you refer that generation as the millennial generation or across all?
I think it's across all.
Across all, including the baby boomers?
Yes.
All right, okay, that's a refreshing change.
Okay.
Mida, would you like to share your experiences?
Okay, I agree with him that it's across all, and it's also about choices. That when a company make that as a policy, or policy wins the half battles, right? And also one very interesting scene after the post-COVID, people tend to value the collaborations, the in-person FaceTime, like what Dato' Nora talked about, the network. People value this much more, and they show up. And even to tell them that, okay, 3 days you can work from home, some of them, they even show up 5 days a week.
Yes.
And it's up to the individuals of choice, right? So when you go back to the training, it's the same thing as well. It's where, when you say that, okay, now we are doing training, I think the show up rate is quite high, the post-COVID. I think back to the basis where human, we still need to have this, the high touch and the high tech together. Yes, the technology also moving on. We're also looking into the areas that training also through the AR, through VR. It not necessarily need to be in-person training because knowledge can be created in anywhere. So on-job training is one, online training is one, or in-person training is one, and going to the classroom training is also one. Because like, in fact, actually now when we are sitting all here together, it's also a form of training because we're also generating the knowledge. When 2 neurons in our brain connect with one another, that is where the information, the insight, and the knowledge being created. And it also drives the innovation. So it's very important that we strike a balance, that not all online, not all offline, but it has to be a balance where some on job, some classroom, and it's a different, I would say, channel for the training because everyone wants training differently and everyone receives information differently as well.
Okay, thank you, Mida. Okay, time flies. I'm now down to just 5 minutes. I thought it'd be great to just ask each one of you to give us 3 great differentiation you believe that that will make the best unique proposition for talent development now and tomorrow. Tonara, you want to quickly give us and share with us? I think the same question applies to the rest.
Wow. I think it would be emphasizing what I did say just now. Let's not be too sure. Okay? Now, why do I say that? Because when everybody has that mindset, you're immediately in a learning mode, and actually you're humble. Okay? Because you keep reminding yourself, I'm not that sure, but then the courage. Right? Because everybody is in that situation, then we will have the courage to try, and we will be more forgiving. Right? Just don't make too expensive mistakes.
So the banks are now more forgiving.
We are.
Yeah.
just like, yeah. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, right? I do want to make sure,
Very
right,
glad, very glad to
that
hear
we
that.
are there. No, I'm a member of the Internal Audit Committee, right? And I hate it. I don't use the word hate very often, but I really hate it when every discovery, every finding, we say, oh, must train, training. I said, what the heck, right? The rule needs to be changed, perhaps.
Yes.
Especially if it's the same, mistake being repeated. Okay, so no, it's not. I truly believe that if everybody is in a learning mode, right, then we'll get somewhere.
Okay. I thought I'd share with the crowd here. I used to work in a bank like 3 decades ago, where mistakes are never forgiven, particularly for the poor tellers. We used to have lots of tellers, and every other day, I have to sit in committees to review cash shortage and cash surplus. Either way, you get punished. Either you get banished to the back room, or you're given letters of warning. Is that still happening?
Oh, even if you didn't ask me, I would have butted in. No, not in my watch. Okay? Yeah. Because, it was a joke. Sorry, there may be regulators here, but, I've always emphasized that, don't get me wrong, right? I am very high on compliance and governance, but the right way. Now, the joke was, I was checking people's personal files those days, okay? And the exception are those files that don't have a disciplinary letter. It's like everybody's got a disciplinary letter.
Okay.
Okay? Then it no longer works for people, right? It's a joke, right? So how many disciplinary letters do you have? That's your time, Keluan.
Another one which I thought was good sharing is that we were asked to take compulsory leave, and leave behind our keys so that bosses can open up the drawers and see what you left in there. Okay, anyway, those were just past history. I thought sometimes we look back with a lot of humor and say how things have changed. Okay, David, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I actually learned a lot from 3 leaders in the banking that I have the privilege to talk to. One was Piyush Gupta, one was Tan Sri Wahid Omar, and the third was Tan Sri Matno, right? And what I see that is the same in terms of the value proposition that you asked is 2 things. One is humility, right? And that humility comes from the sense of, interest and that sense of wanting to, be able to give. Yeah, that one is here because one receives, and therefore one is here to also give. And why I say that is really powerful, because what I learned from these 3 guys was that this is all about creating an environment for people to excel. Yeah. And I could see the value proposition of how they grew their banks, each of them, because of this sense of humility, in their leadership. The second is hunger. What differentiates one talent from another is this hunger. This hunger to learn and excel, right? Because without this hunger, you will become complacent. And when you become complacent, that's where all the danger sets in. Where you're not going to have letter, you will probably jeopardize your whole bank when you become complacent. So that's the 2 value proposition I see in this talent space.
Okay. Thank you, David. So quickly, Hock Lai, your thoughts?
I think first is on the cross-functional training. Because just like a supply chain right now, we don't just look for efficiency, we also look for resiliency. And cross-functional training will actually let the leader have a wider perspective of how the organization works. I think the second part is really the emphasis of soft skills, because I feel that tech skills in the end, right, will be highly commoditized. What differentiates an organization will be the kind of communication skills, the ability to handle uncertainty. Those will be the kind of skills that will differentiate organizations. The last one, I think, is on the use of digital tools to augment the effectiveness. For example, I came across an article on how DBS Bank did. For example, they use AI to predict attrition. Because like every 1% of attrition they save, right, they save about 18 million ringgit. So they use statistics like how early the staff lock out from work, how much leave they carry forward. These are the leading indicators for them to predict whether the staff is happy or not happy. And another AI tool that they use is using AI to screen hirings. For example, they use questionnaire to objectively assess whether a candidate is suitable, and they use AI to screen through all the CVs, and they managed to save the time of screening, right, from 32 minutes per CV to about 8 minutes. So that now they can allocate more time on the face-to-face interview. So this is examples of like combining both high-tech and high-touch. It's not that AI will replace human entirely, but helps you to automate the mundane tasks so that you can focus time on the value-added stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Thank God you're still human. Huh? Yeah. Okay. Okay, Meda.
Just want to add on to what Hock just said. Actually, we also run that for the attrition down to the individual name, and we know which one is high, which one is low, which one is medium. And we need to run these predictions regularly because hiring, it costs organization money, attrition also costs organization money. Yeah. Okay, so what I want to share is about, I would like to share a quote from the CEO of Microsoft. What he shared is very timely for this panel. He said that about to learn it all, then know it all. I think to learn it all is have been a very key words on that. Like it cover about the hunger, the curiosities, the mindset, that to learn it all. Because when we're in the position of know it all, it's very difficult for us to retain the talents or to attract the talents. That even though we have a high potential talent, it's very difficult for us to unleash their potential. So I think that has been a good quote that I would like to share, and it also I think it makes sense and relevant for us when we look into the talent space. Yeah.
Thank you, Meda. I think so far we have touched on interesting elements of today's human capital development, or more so on the wider extent of which how talent management is being put in place as well as measured. And we also hear from each of the panelists on the emerging, or rather today's competencies that includes partnership, collaboration, humility, allowing mistakes, and as well as more forgiving to that extent. More so, I think the entire human side of enterprise is being re-emphasized, not only in the performance management, but also across the different section, involving a cross-section as well as what Hock Lai was talking about in terms of cross-functional, allowing people to learn from each other for the betterment of the enterprise. With that in mind, these are the useful points. I thought that I would like to spend the next 10 minutes opening up to the audience if you have any burning questions to ask each of the panelists of the points that were raised. Yeah, morning.
Okay. I actually wanted to.
Would you like to introduce yourself and then address the question
my name's,
who you want to
Guy
address?
Shepherd, and it's actually for the panel. So first, kudos, because like last session, it's always a bit tough, right, to keep it. And I wanted to share genuinely a challenge that we're facing right now, and just ask your opinions, right, trying to reach out to this new network. So I think particularly with technology-focused companies, there are certain skill sets that right now are just hot property, like front-end devs, data scientists. And what we're noticing is, from a retention perspective, every single March, there is a culture of expectation of, I've been here 1 year, therefore my new pay should be X. And what we're finding is, in my generation, rewarding, my objectives are based on, I can speak, that's fine. My objectives are based on operational, like what's our average margin, revenue, blah, 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 P&L. And then when we're speaking to these younger Gen Zs and millennials, trying to retain our high potential, pre-classified top quadrant, we want you, they're not interested in this. They're like, yeah, the money is okay. And like, I guess my question to you is, even in a smaller, we're a startup, but part of a 100-year-old conglomerate. So there is cultural challenges that we're trying to navigate. But it's very rare that you get this level of experience to talk about this type of talent. So we're sitting there going, well, do we give them extra holiday days? We're now going to implement a work remote. So you can work 100% in an APAC time zone. We don't care if it's a back-end tech role. But what would your thoughts be where the business is focused on revenue, P&L, traditional metrics from my generation and yours, I would imagine, that the shareholders care about, but we're trying to retain talent that doesn't value necessarily, well, here's your 15% pay increase because we think you're awesome. And they're like, well, that's not enough. And my assumption is, oh, you need more. And they're like, no, guy, this is, I want to go and work somewhere else because it's #more interesting. And so just open question if any of you have any suggestions.
Dr. Nora, your recipe to his problem?
So I'll just kick it off. Guy, you said it. Firstly, let me backtrack. Alhamdulillah, thank God, for us, our retention rate of our fresh graduates and the 20 below 30 years old, is actually about 80%. Yeah, yeah. So how do we do it? I think, as you said, right? And I'm practicing not to be too sure here, okay? Yeah. But I think, right, it's because we give them that. They actually want community, right? So we create what we call M-Youth. It's a community of youth in our organization. They run things, they do things, we support them, we enable them. They want to go to Belfast, we send them to Belfast for the annual youth meet. Yeah, so that keeps them together and that keeps them anchored, right? And then they're always doing projects because that's what they want. They want results immediately, right? And so we've just got to match. We manage the mid to long term, and long term I mean 3 years, okay? They deliver the 3 months, 6 months, yeah. So we just dance together. That's some of the things that we're doing today, yeah.
Yeah, I smile at your question because just 2 days ago I was asked by an owner of a conglomerate to talk to his group of high potentials who seem to be quite keen on moving on or doing other things. And the solution was actually quite simple. I brought them together and asked them what is it that they want. Yeah, and the answer was not too surprising, which is we want the right kind of experiences where, we get to experiment, we get to experience, and, at the same time, we feel we are making a big contribution. Yeah, and that became a conversation with the owner too, right? Because he has to set the parameters to allow that to happen. And it was quite a fun negotiation exercise because he started off with he thinking that they don't feel inspired at the job, when actually that inspiration can be created there and then, and you were absolutely right. It was more than money and career paths. Yeah.
I think I can relate to what you mean. I personally founded 3 non-profits. So as a non-profit, we don't have much budget to get people. Very often we need volunteers. I think this term, I call it vertical exposure. Involve them in strategic discussion on what's happening in the industry. Share with them insider news that they can't get elsewhere. That actually inspire them to volunteer for free. Yeah, I find that is quite useful. So letting them involve in a higher purpose than monetary might be useful in situation whereby you have a budget constraint.
Maida, you want to share your?
Okay. I think overall, it's still depending on what are the talent profile that you want. It's not about 100% retention. It's also not about 100% of attritions. I have two organizations that in the two extreme. One is 3% per annum attritions, where I cannot do anything with them. You can't change it because everyone is happy on the job, they stay on the job. But we need a new blood to bring into the organization. But that one, we have a different set of the problem. And on the other hand, I have the organization that have attritions. And then there will be a situation that you can use the opportunities to repurpose certain of the role to fit the organization agenda, strategies, or the direction. But I think the key here is about engagement. The level of the engagements that we need to put into the staff. It's not about training plan. It's beyond training plan on that one. And some of the staff or the younger talents, they also look into the leaders that they are following. And that also make a very big impact for a staff retention.
Thank you. I have time for one more question, if any, from the audience, left and right. Anyone? Yes.
Yes, no doubt. Bank and FIs as an institution of trust. Why people deposit with us? Because they trust us. But wearing the hat of one of the advisor for Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission from 2018 until today, we are receiving more and more informations, complaints, and whistleblowing as well about the wrongdoing of the industry players. So my question is, while we are talking about talents, trust, about digital transformations, yes, we are very looking forward. How do we ensure that while we are moving towards digital transformation, the talent is also transformed? They really embrace the culture of governance, integrity, and ethics. Thank you.
Okay, a fine questions to the end of this session. Dato' Nora, you want to take that?
Okay, so no, I totally agree, Doctor. Which is why I mentioned just now, right, that we do need to ensure that we create the work environment where, as Hotlai said, you know, it all begins and ends with purpose, right? So we spend a lot of time talking about purpose, why we're doing this, right? And so there's carrot and the stick, right? And we are very swift when it comes to any wrongdoing, right? In fact, I have a very senior person that we fired, okay? It was very difficult. It was almost like half-half in the panel. Why? Because the normal reason, right? Very important revenue generator, okay? But, yeah, we put our foot down. Majority by one only, right? So we fired. And it's a court case now. But that's fine, right? So we demonstrate to the organization, whilst we are opening up, we want new ideas, we want, you know, we want you to try things. Yes, we will provide air cover, right? In case you make some mistakes, as long as the intention, the nawaitu is right. At the same time, there's a line. You cross, you're fired immediately. Yeah, so, you know, that's how we do it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think my real advice is be very conscious of what is that red line here, and that everyone needs to know. Because once they know, and they consciously cross it, that's called negligence, right? And deliberate action needs to be taken.
Hoglai?
I couldn't agree more than what Dato' Nora says. It's really the senior leadership setting the example, because if they don't walk the talk and be very governance driven, ethics driven, then the rest of the organization, the staff will not learn and follow. Even not just at organization level, even at country level, if the senior country leaders don't set an example, I mean, I'm referring to in Singapore, that's why the leaders in Singapore, they always set an example. Because if they don't set the right example, the rest will not believe that governance and ethics is important.
Okay, last but not least.
Probably I think it's accountability, because like in many of the organizations, like for example in OCBC, we have a set of value that we hold on to. And when it comes to a performance, when it comes to many different area assessment, the set of value also will bring in. Like one of the value is integrity, that has the leaders or the individuals or the staff demonstrated that. So be it we are living in a digital era, or we are living in any of the future era, or with AI or without AI, I would think that these are some of the good value where organizations, that when they call out to, they have to live up to that standard, and that has become a good role model as well. So accountability is one that every individual have to hold on to, perhaps.
Okay. Thank you, Meda. It's exactly 5 now. We've been very, very compliant to the timekeeping. Coming from a financial service industry, we make it sure that this happens. Okay, thank you, panelists, for this enlightening discussion on this very wide topic on talent management in the financial industry. We all agree that talent management is an evolving thing, and it is, while it is a must-do thing, but it is always challenging simply because it has to be aligned to the evolving context of which the industry operates, not only in the current environment or local environment, but also because of the nature of its industry. Meaning, you know, it has to ensure and uphold the rules, as well as, more importantly, ensuring that public interest is enshrined as part of the culture of the industry. With that in mind, thank you again all for it. We have come to close of this session, and thank you for all, to all of those who are brave enough to remain behind. A very big thank you to all of you, and thank you to the organizers.